A new manager mocked. A customer for looking like he couldn't afford a car. What she didn't know, he owned the entire dealership. It was nearly 6 in the evening when Reginald V. Lockhart stepped out of the Blacktown car and into the drizzle. The pavement in front of Lockhart Auto Group shimmered under the scattered streetlights. Dressed in a plain navy hoodie, scuffed sneakers, and worn jeans from his college days, Reginald didn't look like a man worth $38 1.000.000. He didn't care. After 3 days of back-to-back meetings in Minneapolis, he was tired, hungry, and just wanted to see how things were going on the ground. Unfiltered Rockford wasn't his hometown, but this location had a personal story behind it. 5 years earlier, this exact dealership had been on the brink of shutting down. Reginald had stepped in port and capital, rebuilt the staff from scratch, and made it one of the best performing in the region. It mattered to him. He pushed through the glass doors and stepped into the glossy showroom. The scent of polished leather and fresh tires greeted him. A red 2024 Genesis G80 sat under bright white lights. A young couple leaned against a display counter, laughing, a salesman in a gray blazer speaking to them with animation. Everything looked like it was running smoothly, but something felt off. The moment he stepped further inside, a sharp voice cut across the room. "Excuse me, sir. Are you here to drop off keys? Maintenance is over there," said a white woman from behind the reception desk. She didn't smile, didn't wait for an answer. Reginald blinked slowly and turned toward her. She stood up, heels clicking on the tile, posture stiff. "Actually, this area is for customers with appointments." Only, she added. Her voice was louder, now catching the attention of 2 employees near the service bay entrance. Reginald looked around the showroom. A few employees glanced over, unsure, but no one said a word. He turned back to her and gently said, "I'm just here to see how things are going." She folded her arms. "You're not on the books, and I don't know what you think this place is, but we don't allow loitering. Maybe try the used lot down the road. They'll let anyone browse over there." That one landed with weight. Reginald didn't flinch, his face remained calm. Unreadable, but behind his eyes a storm was starting. She didn't ask for his name. She didn't ask what he wanted. She didn't care to. He nodded slowly, then pulled out his phone. A quick call. "Yeah, this is Reggie. I'm at Rockford. I need you down here now." "No, not security, you." He hung up and slid the phone back into his hoodie pocket. Then he walked over to one of the customer lounge chairs and took a seat like he owned the place. Because he did, the manager watched him, clearly irritated. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave." "I'm not going to say it again." Still, he said nothing, just looked at the family photo on her desk behind the counter. 2 kids and a husband in a matching vest. Reginald leaned back in the chair, hands clasped across his stomach. "I'll wait," he said. From behind the sales desks, a younger black employee named Leon peeked up, puzzled. He whispered something to his colleague, who shrugged. Attention had settled over the showroom. The laughter from earlier had faded. A small child's voice echoed from the lounge area, then stopped. Everyone was watching now, but pretending not to. 15 minutes, that's all it would take. But someone was about to walk through that door who'd change the entire energy in the room. The next few minutes dragged. Reginald stayed seated, elbows on the armrests, legs crossed at the ankle. He wasn't scrolling through his phone. He wasn't reading a brochure. He just watched. Karen, the floor manager, though he hadn't yet used her name, paced behind the front desk, visibly annoyed. She checked the digital scheduler, again, as if hoping she had somehow missed his name. Still not there, of course it wasn't. She turned to Leon, the young salesman who had whispered earlier. "Do you know this guy?" she asked. Leon shifted in place. "I've seen him before, I think." He said he might be from corporate. "Not sure," she scoffed. "Corporate doesn't wear hoodies." Reginald caught that he didn't blink. "I'm not dealing with this today," she muttered under her breath, then walked directly over to him, crossing her arms. "Sir, I'm going to need you to step outside until you can tell me who you're here to see." "I already made a call," Reginald said, voice even. "They'll be here soon." "That's not how this works," she replied quickly, eyes darting to the curious customers nearby. "We have a protocol. You don't just sit around waiting like this. You're making people uncomfortable." The word uncomfortable hit like a dart. Thrown with a steady hand, he was calm. But something behind his stare changed. "I'm making people uncomfortable?" he asked quietly. "Look, sir, I don't want to involve security." She began. He raised a hand. "That won't be necessary." but that only seemed to push her further. I don't care who you think you are. If you're trying to pull some walk-in, stunt to get a discount or intimidate my staff, it's not going to work here. This is a professional showroom. The couple who had been browsing the Genesis now stood frozen. The woman holding a brochure whispered to her partner, "I think that's the owner," but she wasn't sure. It seemed too unreal. Leon took a few tentative steps closer. "Karen, maybe we should just wait a minute." Karen turned sharply. "Leon, I didn't ask for help. Go show the Mayfields the Sonata." Leon hesitated. He looked at Reginald, then back at her. But he backed off. Reginald leaned forward in the chair. His hands were now folded, elbows resting on his knees. "You didn't ask for my name," he said finally. "I didn't need to," she shot back. "You didn't ask why I came." She stared at him for a beat, then glanced toward the door. Right as the company car pulled up outside. Black Escalade. Subtle but powerful, the kind used only by higher-ups. The door opened and Marcus Wills, the regional vice president, stepped inside. He was in a fitted navy suit, rain still drying on his shoulders. His eyes scanned the room once, immediately spotting Reginald in the chair. "Reggie," he said with a short nod. Karen turned white. Reginald stood up. The room shifted, employees straightened their backs. The receptionist lowered her phone. The couple holding brochures slowly stepped aside. "Mr. Lockhart, I didn't realize." Karen began, suddenly stumbling over her words. He held up his hand again, no anger, no shouting. "Just presence." "Marcus," Reginald said. "We need to have a company conversation right here." Right now. Marcus nodded and looked around the floor. "Everyone take a pause. 5 minutes, no customers, no calls, just listen." No one moved. "Karen," Reginald said, turning toward her. "You've been working here." How long? She swallowed. 3 weeks. But in that time, he continued. "How many black customers have you turned away?" Her mouth opened, then shut again. "I don't know," she said. "I treat everyone the same." Reginald turned slowly toward Leon. "Leon, be honest. Have there been complaints?" Leon looked terrified, then nodded once. "Yeah. A couple." Karen spun to him. "Are you serious?" "I didn't know who to tell." Leon muttered. "People say stuff." Reginald exhaled. That's enough. The room had changed completely. The employees weren't watching anymore. They were absorbing. Karen's voice came quieter now. "If I had known who you were." He met her eyes. "That's the problem. You shouldn't need to," but that wasn't the only problem. There was still a reckoning coming, and it was already too late to stop it. Marcus stepped forward and spoke with the clarity of someone who'd been in uncomfortable boardrooms and tenser parking lots. "Everyone," he said, "you're standing on a floor that wouldn't exist without this man. Let me make that clear. For those who are new or weren't paying attention. At orientation, this dealership was nearly gone 5 years ago. Foreclosure letters were coming in daily. Staff had been laid off. Then he showed up." He gestured to Reginald, who remained standing silently at his side. "He invested not just money but people, time, training. You have benefits because of him. This building got its remodel because of him. And some of you still treat him like he doesn't belong." Karen's eyes were fixed on the floor. Her arms were wrapped tight around herself now like a shield. She couldn't seem to lower. "I didn't know," she whispered. "You didn't care," Reginald corrected. Karen flinched, but he wasn't trying to be cruel. He was just tired of this script. "I've walked into more rooms than I can count." He continued, speaking now to the entire staff. "And I've been ignored in almost all of them. I've been asked if I was lost. I've been mistaken for a delivery guy, a valet, a janitor. You'd be surprised how fast someone's tone changes once they realize I sign their checks." Leon looked down. A few other employees were clearly uncomfortable. "But today," Reginald said, "this wasn't just about me. It's about the next guy who walks in with scuffed shoes. It's about how many people like me are talked down to, just because they don't look the way you expect them to." Karen raised her head, eyes glassy. "I made a mistake." "You did," Reginald said, "and I could leave it at that. I've let plenty of things slide over the years." Brushed off a lot of disrespect with a smile, thinking that was the professional thing to do. He turned to Marcus. "But I'm not brushing this off." Marcus gave a firm nod. "Karen, I'm terminating your employment effective immediately. HR has already been informed." Her mouth opened, stunned. "You're serious?" she asked, voice cracking. "You were on probation," Marcus said, "and this is beyond what we can defend." Karen looked at the rest of the staff for support. No one stepped in. A few looked away. Leon quietly walked over to the door, pushed it open and held it there. Karen took a long breath, eyes wide, then turned and walked out without another word. as the door shut behind her. The tension in the room shifted again, this time to silence. Nobody moved. Reginald looked around slowly. He could feel the weight of it all pressing in on the people watching. He walked toward the front counter and leaned on it slightly. This place wasn't built to just sell cars. It was built to be better than the places that made people like me feel small. It was built so that the next generation of black kids would see somebody running the place, not just cleaning it a quiet. Murmur went through the group. He turned to Leon. You said people complained. Leon nodded. Yeah. A guy last week said she told him the bank probably wouldn't approve him anyway. Said she didn't want to waste his time. He left. Reginald closed his eyes briefly. That's money out of the door. That's someone walking away with another reason to stop trying. Leon looked genuinely pained. I didn't know how to bring it up. You just did. Reginald said that's what matters. Marcus stepped beside him from this moment forward. There will be new training across all locations. Not some shallow 2-hour module. We're bringing in real people, real conversation. And we're going to make damn sure this never happens again. The room exhaled as one. It felt like a release of tension, of guilt, of confusion. Reginald didn't smile, not yet. He just looked around the room, then back at the chair where he'd sat silently 30 minutes earlier. I wasn't here to test anyone, he said. I was just tired, wanted to see how y'all were doing. He paused. But you learn a lot when people think you're nobody. And now, word of what happened was already leaving the building and heading toward the kind of attention no one could control. By the time Karen's car pulled away from the dealership, the story had already started to leak. A customer who had overheard everything, the same woman clutching a Genesis brochure earlier, had quietly recorded parts of the confrontation on her phone. She wasn't trying to make a spectacle out of it. She was just stunned, shocked by how quickly the tone had changed, and how calmly the man who owned the building handled it all. That clip, no longer than 90 seconds, would later light up group chats and timelines. But inside the dealership, things were still raw. Reginald didn't ask anyone to return to their desks right away. He wasn't done speaking. He turned back to the remaining staff. The service team had filtered in quietly from the back. Mechanics with oil-stained sleeves, janitors with cautious eyes. Everyone had heard something. Now they were standing in a semicircle, watching the man they'd only seen in company, newsletters and corporate videos. This isn't about her, he said. Not entirely. He let that sit for a second. I've been where some of you all are, doing everything right, showing up on time, putting in extra hours, and still feeling like you have to prove you belong, that you have to be better just to be seen as equal. One of the older salesmen, a light-skinned man in a crisp white shirt, let out a soft, almost guilty breath. Reginald didn't call him out. This dealership, he continued, wasn't just a business decision for me. It was a promise. My uncle used to bring me to dealerships, just to look around. He couldn't afford anything, but he wanted to show me what it felt like to be near something nice. Problem was, nobody ever looked at us like we were worth talking to. We were invisible. He paused. So when I made my first 1.000.000, I didn't go buy a sports car. I bought into a dealership because I remembered how it felt to be on the other side of that glass. There was no applause, no need. The silence was louder than any. Clapping could have been. I know bias. When I see it, he added, it's not always yelling or slurs. Sometimes it's just silence. A tone, a refusal to make eye contact. A suggestion to try somewhere else. That's what we saw today. Leon shifted uncomfortably, then raised his hand slightly. Reginald turned toward him. Speak. I've heard her say stuff before. Not just to customers, about other staff. I didn't know if it was bad enough to say something, but it never felt right. Reginald nodded. You said it, now that counts. Another young woman in the finance department stepped forward. I worked under her at my last job. She told me once not to wear my natural hair because it looked unprofessional. I didn't speak up then. I was afraid. The group stiffened. The weight of her words filled the room. Reginald met her eyes. Thank you. You don't have to be afraid here. She looked down, tears threatening but not falling. Marcus pulled out a folded sheet of paper. I was going to send this in an email, he said, but now's better. He handed it to Reginald. It was a memo drafted a few days earlier about evaluating store-level culture more aggressively. Reginald scanned it quickly. Send this out tonight, he said, and add a note. This isn't about punishment, it's about protection. He looked around once more. If anyone ever feels overlooked, talked down to, or made to feel small in my buildings, come to me directly. Don't wait for it to get worse, you have my number. Use it, someone in the back whispered. Damn, a few people chuckled nervously, he smiled. For the first time that day. Then his face turned serious again. I want you to understand something. Karen didn't lose her job because of who I am. She lost it because she forgot what this place stands for. He walked over to the service desk and rested both hands on the cool marble. Do better. For each other. For the people who walk through that door. For the next tired dad, who walks in wearing beat-up sneakers, hoping to finally buy the car he's been dreaming of. Don't make him prove himself. A heavy pause. Then Reginald turned to Marcus. Let's finish up in the back. Marcus nodded, and the two of them made their way toward the office hallway, but the silence left behind wasn't quiet. It was charged, because everyone in that room now knew that what had just happened was going to echo far beyond those walls. The next morning, the video clip had spread like wildfire. It wasn't polished. The angle was awkward. The audio had the usual background noise. But the story didn't need fancy editing. It needed truth. A tired black man in a hoodie, calmly being dismissed in the very space he owned, and then revealing that he was the CEO. It was short, it was raw, it was real. By 10 a.m. it had been reposted on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and even LinkedIn. Comment sections filled up fast. Some people were shocked. Others weren't surprised at all. She really told the owner to try the used lot. This man handled it with more class than I ever could. How many other Karens are out here treating customers like this every day? And then, of course, came the backlash against the dealership. Reginald knew it was coming. He'd dealt with public pressure before. It didn't faze him. What mattered more were the people watching from the shadows, the ones who had been silenced too many times to count. At headquarters in Madison, calls flooded in media. Outlets wanted interviews, bloggers wrote about it. A few old college friends even reached out to say they'd seen his face on their morning news feed. But Reginald didn't jump in front of a camera. He didn't give a big emotional statement. He let the truth sit. Instead, he wrote an internal message. Subject: what happened at Rockford and where we go from here. To my entire team. Some of you have seen the video. Others have heard whispers. Here's what I want you to know. Yes, that was me in the showroom. Yes, that manager has been terminated. And no, this isn't about public image. It's about values. I didn't build Lockhart Auto just to sell cars. I built it so people who've been overlooked, their whole lives, would finally feel seen. Bias, whether quiet or loud, has no home here. If you're ever in doubt, speak up. If something doesn't feel right, say something. And if you're ever treated like your dignity doesn't matter, you call me. You don't need to go viral to be heard. We will be rolling out new training next week. Not as a checkbox, but as a conversation. We're going to keep building this company on respect. Stay sharp. Reginald. The message went out to every branch, every inbox. And within hours, emails started pouring back in. One from a black receptionist in Tulsa. I cried reading this, I've been holding in so much. Another from a Latino mechanic in Milwaukee. Thank you for saying what most bosses wouldn't even notice. Even some of the white employees replied. Grateful to be part of a company that didn't hide when things got uncomfortable. But it wasn't all praise. A former regional manager who had quietly left last year posted a thread online, hinting that this wasn't the first time something like this had happened, that maybe the problem ran deeper. Reginald read every word, and he didn't argue. He called that former employee personally. Want to talk, he said. They met the next day. Inside the dealerships, things had shifted. Quietly but definitely. People paid more attention to their tone. Staff meetings started with check-ins, not just sales numbers. And at Rockford, Leon got promoted. He didn't ask for it, Reginald offered it. You kept your head down too long. Reginald told him time to lift it up. Leon accepted the new position. He also asked if he could help lead the new culture workshops. Reginald said yes, and as for Karen, nobody really heard from her after that. A few tried to track her down on social media, but her profiles were gone. Some said she had taken legal advice. Others said she moved states. But Reginald didn't chase that part of the story. He wasn't interested in revenge. He was interested in repair. But as the internet kept dissecting what happened in that video, one thing became clearer each day. This wasn't just a moment. It was a mirror. And a lot of people didn't like what they saw. Staring back. By the end of the week, Reginald had turned down 5 interview requests: CNN, NPR, a daytime talk show, even a podcast hosted by a former NBA player. Every producer pitched the same angle. The CEO who exposed bias, with quiet dignity. But Reginald wasn't interested in telling the story the way they wanted to frame it. He hadn't done anything special in his eyes. He just walked into a building he owned and expected to be treated like a person. What was special to him were the stories coming out of the shadows. A former intern from their Cleveland location wrote him a handwritten letter. In it, she shared how she used to wear baggy clothes and old sneakers to work because she couldn't afford much else. One of her supervisors had once asked her if she was in the right office. When she tried to enter a morning strategy meeting, she never told anyone. She'd been too scared to lose her opportunity. Now she said, watching the video had helped her realize how wrong that was and how she wished she'd spoken up. That hit Reginald harder than anything else. So he did something unexpected. He asked every department head to submit a list of employees who had been overlooked. People who worked hard, kept quiet, never complained, but were passed over for promotions or projects because they weren't loud or polished. He didn't want resumes, he wanted names. Over the next few weeks, those names turned into meetings. Some were casual sit-downs at break rooms. Others happened over coffee. One happened in a parking lot after closing. Reginald listened more than he spoke. And what he heard wasn't just about race. It was about being invisible. The 56-year-old black janitor who'd never been asked his opinion on anything, but knew exactly which departments were wasting time. The South Asian technician who fixed more cars than anyone else, but had been told he was too quiet for a team lead role. The Haitian finance rep who spoke 3 languages, but was always told to tone it down. When dealing with white clients, Reginald wrote it all down. Then he tore up the org chart. He called a full leadership retreat in Madison. And this time, no one got to talk first, except the people who usually didn't get invited. Receptionist porters. Night shift, they told the truth. And then they told him how it could be better. Meanwhile, back at the Rockford location, a new atmosphere had started to take shape. Not just because Karen was gone, but because people had seen what happened when the wrong teasing was tolerated for too long. Leon's first team meeting as floor leader was short, but it set the tone. Look, he told the room, I'm not here to pretend we're all perfect. But if you ever hear somebody making a customer feel small, say something. If it's me, say it to my face. No more backroom whispers. No more waiting till corporate shows up. We don't get better by staying quiet. Nobody clapped. They just nodded. It felt real. Reginald visited the location again 3 weeks later, this time wearing a button-down shirt and slacks. Not because he wanted to look like a boss, just because he had dinner plans with his daughter afterward and didn't feel like changing clothes twice. He walked in, and this time the receptionist greeted him first. Smiled, offered him coffee. Leon walked over with 2 salespeople and shook his hand in front of everyone. Boss, he said with a grin, welcome back. A few customers turned their heads curious. Reginald nodded once, then after a beat he said, how's the used lot down the road doing? Laughter broke out across the room, but not because of spite, because everyone in the room remembered, and nobody wanted to go back to how things used to be. But one thing still hadn't happened. Reginald hadn't spoken publicly about the video, and people were waiting. It was a month to the day when Reginald finally sat down in front of a camera. Not for a morning show, not for a podcast, not for some viral sit-down sponsored by a luxury brand. He filmed it in his office, just him, a desk, a glass of water, and the steady eye of a recording assistant who knew not to interrupt. No fancy intro, no corporate logo. Just a simple, quiet beginning. My name is Reginald Lockhart, he said, looking directly into the lens. And if you're watching this, you've probably seen the video. He took a breath. I didn't mean for it to become a moment. I didn't walk into that dealership looking for attention. I wasn't trying to catch anybody off guard or test anybody's heart. He paused, swallowed once. His voice didn't tremble, but it softened. I was just tired. I had a long flight. My back was sore, and I wanted to check in on one of the places I helped build. That's it. He leaned forward slightly, elbows on the desk. But what happened next? That wasn't about me. It was about the way we're still trained to judge people before we know them. About how easy it is to dismiss somebody when they don't look the part. Reginald looked off camera for a moment, then back. I've worn $3,000 suits, and I've worn sweatpants with holes in them. I've been handed keys to boardrooms, and I've been followed around by store security. And here's the truth. Neither version of me deserves more respect than the other. His eyes narrowed, not in anger, but focused this whole thing. It struck a nerve because people are tired. Tired of having to prove their worth. Just to be treated like a human being. Tired of the fake smiles. When someone realizes you're not who they thought. Tired of the small humiliations that stack up until your shoulders don't sit the same anymore. He didn't raise his voice once. He didn't have to, but here's the part people didn't see. He continued after the camera stopped rolling. After the clicks and shares and comments. That's when the real work began. He listed the culture workshops now underway. The staff promotions. The new system for anonymous reporting. The mentorship. Program for first-year employees in every Lockhart Auto. Location. He didn't mention names. He didn't need to. This isn't about canceling someone. It's not about piling on a person who made a mistake. It's about what happens after the mistake. Whether you're willing to own it. Whether the people around you are willing to listen and grow, or just keep their head down and hope. Nobody looks their way. He folded his hands. I don't expect to change the world with one viral video. But if this story makes one hiring manager think twice, if it makes one customer feel seen, if it makes one kid believe he can own the building he used to be ignored in, then that's enough for me. Another pause. Then he added one last thing. If you're someone who's ever been looked past, talked down to, or told you don't belong, I see you, I've been you. And your value doesn't depend on who notices it. It's already there. The screen faded to black. At the end, in plain white letters. Respect should never depend on appearance. Treat people like they matter. Because they do. Back in the dealership. The video played once at the morning staff meeting. Some watched in silence. A few wiped their eyes. One junior sales rep whispered, "That's the realest thing I've heard in months." And customers, they kept coming in. Not because of pity. Not because the dealership was trending. But because word had spread. About a place where you could walk in with nothing fancy and still get treated like you belonged. And that Reginald thought was the whole point. So if you're watching this now, remember this. Dignity isn't earned. It's recognized. And the way you treat people when no one's watching. That says everything. If this story meant something to you, subscribe. We've got more to share. And real conversations to keep having.